If a human became immortal, the very first problem wouldn't be pain, boredom, or loneliness. The first problem would be time turning against them. At the beginning, immortality would feel like a blessing. Watching people age while you stay the same would seem almost magical. When you know you can never die, urgency disappears. Fear weakens. You would delay things, endlessly dreams, promises, even emotions. "I'll do it later" would become your most dangerous habit, because later would never run out. Meanwhile, the world around you would refuse to wait. People you love would grow old. Their hair would turn gray, while yours stayed the same. At first, you'd joke about it. Then you'd avoid mirrors when standing next to them. One day, you'd attend their funeral and realize this moment will repeat forever. Friendships would become painful. Every bond would come with an expiration date, but only for them. You would stop getting close to people, not because you don't care, but because caring would hurt too much. Love would become temporary. Attachment would feel like a slow punishment. Then comes the real problem. History would begin to move faster than your emotions. Like an endless hallway with no exit. At first, you would try to give that hallway meaning. You would tell yourself that immortality is what you make of it. You would travel, learn new skills, read every book ever written, master languages, arts, sciences. Decades would pass, like chapters in a single book. A century would feel long but manageable. Then the centuries would begin to stack. You would notice a subtle change inside yourself. Emotions wouldn't hit as hard as they once did. Tragedies that shocked the world would barely move you. Wars would start and end. Millions would die, and instead of grief, you'd feel familiarity. You've seen this pattern before. Many times, this is when the second layer of the problem appears. A human brain was never designed to hold centuries of experiences. Faces would blur together. Names would fade. You would remember the feeling of love, but forget the face of the person you loved first. You would remember betrayal, but not who betrayed you. The past would turn into a fog too heavy to carry, too important to forget. Imagine remembering hundreds of lifetimes, but none of them fully. You would begin to write things down obsessively, journals, recordings, digital backups, trying to preserve who you were. But even those records would decay. Paper would burn. Hard drives would fail. Formats would become obsolete. You can fake your age for only so long. People would notice. Governments would notice. Scientists would notice. A subject, something to be studied, controlled, or hidden. You would learn to run. Every time you stay too long, you endanger yourself. Immortality wouldn't give you freedom, it would chain you to constant movement. And slowly, without realizing it, you would stop thinking in years. You would think in error. You wouldn't ask, what will I do next year? You would ask, what will I do after this civilization collapses? Because you would eventually understand a horrifying truth. The world is not immortal with you. Cities rot, oceans rise. And when the last human dies, you won't feel dramatic sadness. Not the quiet of peace. It's not that you can't die. It's that one day, and when everything else is gone, meaning itself begins to rot. At first, you would try to stay busy. You would talk to yourself, replay old recordings, read the same books again and again, even though you already know every word. You would walk through empty cities, touching walls that once held life, pretending that echoes are voices. Time would keep moving, but nothing would move with it. Days would stop having names. Without other humans, language would start to weaken. Words exist to be shared. Alone, you would begin to simplify your thoughts. Not because you want to, but because there is no one left who needs complexity. Eventually, even your inner voice would grow quiet. You would become your own audience, and then lose interest. You might try to create something got structures, messages for a future that may never exist. But without the hope of being understood, creation feels pointless. Purpose, you'd realize, is a social agreement. Without society, it collapses. And then comes a realization more terrifying than loneliness. Pain doesn't stop. You are immortal, not invulnerable. You can be injured, trapped, buried, crushed, drowned, burned, and now there is no one to save you. One accident could lock you into centuries of suffering. Imagine falling into a deep crack in the earth after an earthquake, unable to climb out. Your body heals, but the position doesn't change. Hunger tortures you, but never kills you. Darkness becomes permanent. You scream at first, but screaming wastes energy, and there's no one to hear. So you wait. Minutes stretch into years, years into centuries. Your mind starts breaking in cycles. You hallucinate conversations. You relive old memories so many times they feel more real than the present. You forget whether your memories are real or inventions designed to keep you sane. This is when immortality becomes something worse than death. Death is an ending. This is an endless middle. Eventually, even suffering becomes normal. You adapt to horror the same way mortals adapt to routine. And that adaptation steals the last thing that made you human, the ability to feel shocked by existence. When you finally escape, if you abed though, you are not the same being who fell. You don't celebrate freedom. You just continue. And that's the final problem of immortality, the one no one talks about. Without an ending, life doesn't become infinite. It becomes undefined. There is no climax, no closure, no final lesson. Just an endless continuation of moments that refuse to conclude. A story that never reaches its last page stops being a story at all. It turns into noise. So the first problem of immortality was never time, loneliness, or pain. The first problem was this: a life without an end slowly forgets why it began. If you want this story to end in a powerful way, or twist into something darker, and in that endless noise, you would eventually do the one thing immortals are never supposed to do. You would start searching for an ending. At first, it would be curiosity. You would test the limit standing in fires, sinking into oceans, exposing yourself to radiation, extremes of cold, extremes of pressure, not because you want to die, but because you want proof that something can still stop you. Nothing does. Your body repairs itself with cruel patience. Pain teaches you nothing new. Fear loses its teeth. You begin to understand that immortality is not protection, it is confinement inside a system that refuses to release you. So your search changes direction. You stop asking, how can I die? You start asking, how can I stop being? You study the universe as it ages. You watch stars burn out one by one. Galaxies drift apart. Expansion accelerates. Energy thins. Heat fades. The universe itself begins to look tired, and then comes a thought so dangerous, it feels forbidden. If everything obeys entropy, why don't you? You realize you are an error, a contradiction in the laws of reality. And contradictions don't disappear quietly. They destabilize the system they exist in. Slowly, you begin to suspect that your immortality isn't a gift given to the universe, but a flaw hidden inside it. So you wait. You wait through the last stars. You wait through the last black holes. You wait through time so long that time itself loses structure. Eventually, there is nothing left but darkness in you. No space. No sound. No motion. Just awareness floating in an existence that has reached absolute stillness. This is when the universe speaks not in words, but in understanding. You finally comprehend the truth. Immortality was never meant to preserve life. It was meant to observe the end. You were the universe's memory. Its witness. The thing that would remain long enough to confirm that everything else truly disappeared. And now that the observation is complete, there is nothing left to observe. That's when something inside you changes. For the first time since becoming immortal, you feel resistance not from your body, but from reality itself. The rules that kept you alive begin to loosen. Not breaking, but letting go. You realize endings were never forbidden. They were delayed. Because even immortality has a condition. It lasts only as long as there is something to be immortal within. As the final concept of existence collapses, you feel something unfamiliar. Relief. Not fear. Not pain. Relief, your last thought, isn't dramatic. It isn't profound. It's simple. So this is why mortals rushed. And then after an eternity of continuation, the story finally remembers how to stop. The end doesn't arrive like an explosion. It arrives like understanding. After the universe lets go of you, there is no tunnel of light, no sudden darkness. Instead, there's a strange narrowing like existence folding inward. Time doesn't stop. It simply loses direction. Past and future dissolve until only a single, quiet moment remains. You are still aware, but you are no longer separate. You realize now what immortality truly was. Not endless life, but endless witnessing. You were never meant to conquer time. You were meant to carry it. Every memory you thought was fading was never lost. They were being compressed, distilled, turned into something smaller and purer. Faces, voices, loves, wars, laughter, screams, everything humanity ever was condensed inside you like a final archive. You were not cursed to live forever. You were chosen to remember forever until remembering was no longer needed. And now, at the edge of nothing, memory becomes heavy. You feel the weight of the first fire ever discovered, the last child ever born, the rise of the first city, the silence after the last one fell. All of it presses inward, not painfully, but completely, like a book closing after the final page. That's when you understand the last secret. Endings don't erase stories, they complete them. For the first time since immortality began, you are not waiting. You are not searching. You are not continuing. You are arriving. The concept of you begins to soften, not vanish, transform. Individual thoughts blur into a larger awareness, and that awareness feels peaceful. Not because everything is fine, but because everything is finished. And in that stillness, something impossible happens. A spark. Not light, not matter. Possibility. You realize the universe doesn't end the way mortals imagine. It doesn't collapse into nothingness. It resets not automatically, not endlessly, but intentionally. An intention requires memory. It requires you. The universe doesn't need another witness. It needs a seed. Every experience you carried of a mistake, every kindness, every cruelty becomes data, instructions, boundaries. Lessons written not in words, but in existence itself. You feel yourself dissolving, not dying, but distributing. Your awareness stretches thin, spreading into the fabric of what will come next. Laws form. Time regains direction. Space unfolds like a held breath, finally released. You are no longer a being inside the universe. You are the reason the next one won't repeat the same mistakes. Pain doesn't disappear, but it becomes meaningful. Death returns, but it becomes merciful. Time shortens, not as a flaw, but as gift. Because now you know what endlessness does to a soul, and as the first stars of a new universe ignite, something extraordinary happens. You forget. Not everything. Just enough. Enough to allow life to feel urgent again. Enough to let love feel risky. Enough to make moments feel fragile and precious. Immortality ends not with destruction, but with mercy, the mercy of limitation. Somewhere, billions of years later, a human will look up at the night sky and feel an unexplainable ache. A sense that life matters deeply, even though it is short. They won't know why. But that feeling is you. You didn't escape immortality by dying. You escaped it by becoming purpose. And that is the true end of the story. Not eternal life, not eternal suffering, but a finite world, shaped by someone who finally understood why it needed to be finite at all.